Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast once again. It's episode number 234, entitled M is for Menus. It was published on Thursday the 17th of June 2021. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and as always, a very small amount of housekeeping. Just before we begin, head over to wpbuilds.com. That's the website where we keep all of our content. We do produce a bit of content. We produce the podcast, which you're listening to. That comes out on a Thursday. And then we've also got the This Week in WordPress show, which I do with my good friend Paul Lacey. That we do live, 2 p.m. UK time, every Monday. You can find that at wpbuilds.com/live or in our Facebook group. And we put that out as a blog post and a audio podcast, and indeed on YouTube as a video. That comes out the following day at 7 a.m. So 2 things for you each and every week. If you'd like to be notified about those, the best way to do that is to go to wpbuilds.com/subscribe. I'd love it if you did that. Join our newsletter. There's also links on that page to our Facebook group, Twitter handle, and so on and so forth. So that's wpbuilds.com/subscribe. Pause the podcast now and go and get yourself on that newsletter. Also, I'm trying out a bit of an experiment. I'm not exactly fed up with Facebook, but I'm just curious to see if a different alternative might be a bit of fun. And so I've set up an open source bit of software, which is called Mastodon. You can find it at wpbuilds.social. And indeed, that is a URL. wpbuilds.social. It behaves a bit like Twitter, but I was just wondering if it might be possible to get some of you guys in and have a dedicated WordPress conversation over there. There's probably only about 25 or 30 of us at the moment, but if you want to join in, wpbuilds.social. What a strange URL that is. So wpbuilds.social, and you can join us over there and see if it's something that you like. If you'd like to find a WordPress deal this week, head over to wpbuilds.com/deals. It's a bit like Black Friday, but every single day of the week. Searchable, filterable list of coupon codes for specific products that people have reached out to us and provided coupon codes just for you, the WP Builds listeners. Should you wish to have your product or service put in front of a WordPress-specific audience, you can use WP Builds to advertise on, and you can find out how to do that at wpbuilds.com/advertise, a bit like A/B Split Test have done. Do you want to set up your A/B split test in record time? The new A/B split test plugin for WordPress will have you up and running in a couple of minutes. Use your existing pages and you can test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is that it works with Elementor, Beaver Builder and the WordPress block editor. Check it out and get a free demo. absplittest.com. Oakley dokley, episode 234, that's what you come here for. M is for menus. Today I'm chatting with my good friend David Wormsley. We're going through the list of the letters in the alphabet and we've arrived at M, and we've decided that this is going to be menus. There's actually more in this than I possibly suspected, because once you dig into it, there's all sorts of things on offer here. Accessibility, whether or not you should think about things mobile first. What about the size? What about the way that you set it out? Should it be a fly-in menu or some kind of drop-down menu? Are mega menus best? There's absolutely loads. We could have gone on for hours, but we didn't. You'll be pleased to know. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. If you did, shout out to us on Twitter at WPBuilds, or, like I said, join our little Mastodon installation, wpbuilds.social, or just give us some comments at the bottom of the post. I hope that you enjoy it.
Hello, it's another A to Z of WordPress, the series where we attempt to cover all the major aspects of building and maintaining sites with WordPress. Today is the letter M for me and you.
Oh, very nice. You snuck that one in.
Menu.
Nice.
Yeah, I got that from Big Bang Theory. Become my dodgy joke section, this, hasn't it?
Yeah, no more, please. That's your you've had your ration of one rubbish joke for this episode.
When people said I wanted to be a comedian, they laughed.
Oh,
now no one's
good grief. No, that's 2 now. Oh,
Bob Monkhouse, that is.
Oh, dear me. Right. Honestly,
anyway,
no more.
Yeah. Back to the subject. So menu. So we've got a format for this. We're going with the menu format. So we're going to start off with a small aperitif. a preamble.
Nice.
So, but we just need to say a few things about menus and what we're covering here.
Sure.
And that really is that menus are so important that we thought this needed a topic of its own, because really no one gets anywhere on the web without well organized links. And I think it's kind of key to all the websites that we build.
It's the kind of thing that you never really think of. You know you've got to do it, but it doesn't really, in my head at least, have the importance of other parts of the site, because you concentrate on the bits that are right there in front of you visually, you know, the header and the footer and the fonts and the spacing and the white space and all of that kind of stuff. And yet the bit that most people are going to interact with is the menu. And yet usually it's just some, you know, standard font. Try to put the correct number of items in, set some colors that might be a different hover state, and you're done. But really, it's the bit, like you said, it's the most important bit of the site in terms of getting from A to Z, and it's quite unlikely that they're going to get to your site and be in exactly the right place. Certainly for, you know, for a large website, they're probably just going to search for something, arrive at a random page via a Google search, and you want them to go from there to get to where it is that you want them to go. So it's terribly important.
Yeah, and I think there's a lack of research. We were talking earlier about kind of the accessibility side of things, getting menus right, and we're still not sure about certain things, and there isn't really the statistics. There is a great person out there, the guru of web page usability, Jacob Nielsen, who with Don Norman has the NN group, where a lot of us refer to, which has a fair bit of data on menus, and they're quite vocal on it. But even there, you can't find a great deal on certain things. So let's move on to our starter course, which is really usability, shall we? So we were talking first about the number of items that would be ideal to have in your menu. And I think this is something that Jacob Nielsen's mentioned, but I've known it from psychology, that there is this magic number 7, which is people are different, but it's the amount of information that you can chunk. Anything over 7 is considered as a bit of an overload. So the ideal of your menus is to get them below the number 7.
So this has got nothing to do with the space on the page. This isn't that you could, generally speaking, fit 7 different words on the top of your website, let's say next to a logo or something. This is literally to do with what typically the human brain can cope with. So if you show them 15 things, they feel a bit bamboozled and are likely to just sort of wander off and get a bit, you know, a bit lost. But if you show them 7, that seems to be the sort of upper limit of what they can cope with and take in, and the eye can suck in that information quickly and easily. That's fascinating.
Yeah, just information overload. The idea that something is easy to navigate around if you keep it under that number. And of course, it does vary from individuals. I know there's been experiments in psychology on this. And so ideally, you would want to be going to 5 or 6 if you can. But then we get into this. And we were talking about this before, about a standard order of items that we might have in our menus for pages. And I've certainly gone with, and we debated this, whether we have home as an actual link in your menu, as well as the logo or the icon being clickable to home.
Yeah, you
and
see,
I do.
I don't have any research on this. I just have my own proclivity, which is that the logo is always home. And I've had enough clients tell me that, well, okay, we've got limited space. Can we just use the logo? And it's, yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. But you could well be right. Maybe people are still searching about, looking for the home icon. And I guess as well, you know, it depends. Maybe you reduce the size or the importance of the logo on certain views. You know, perhaps if it's on mobile, your logo kind of almost shrinks to insignificance and the menu takes over. And in those situations, then the word home would be important. My feeling is that on a menu where, let's say you've got a letterbox shaped logo and you've then got the menu items on the right, and you've got 7 of those, they're starting to crowd each other out a little bit, and the logo's getting constrained by the structure of the menu. And in that situation, I think the first thing to be sacrificed is the word home. I've experimented with changing that out for a little house icon, you know, the kind of icon where it's just, you know, roof and a door in the front of the house and so on. That people have been generally happy with that. But I go for, don't put the home icon Sorry, don't put a home icon in, don't put the home text in, just have the logo as the home button, which you don't do it that way.
No, I'm still fearful of it. I mean, I think the last thing I read on this that was a bit of research, which still goes back to something like 2014, maybe even 2013, where they still predicted that up to 50% of people still didn't know the tradition of being able to click on the icon. And I can still see that happening amongst my in-laws on the web. They still don't go to that. They still don't know it. And even stranger, my old colleague who used to build websites with, and she still builds the occasional website, doesn't seem to do it, doesn't link up her logo to home. So she needs it. So it's still there. People are out there. I mean, whether that's going to be your audience is probably going to be the key thing when determining these things, given there's no real research. But I play safe and put it there as a standard until there's an argument otherwise.
Yeah, I would say that in the case of your colleague, she's definitely missing a trick. Whether or not she has the word home or not is something you could debate, but not putting a link in the icon for the logo or the image for the logo or whatever it might be, that just seems kind of wasted, because there's going to be a proportion of people who will expect that, so you might as well use it.
I know. I mean, I use her as an example. It's just that, she'd been building websites before I was, back in 2000, and she still uses the web a lot. And you would have thought something like that would have stuck. Maybe she's just stuck in the past, and that's why she doesn't do it. But I do see there are people who just don't know that convention.
Yeah,
and,
it's fascinating.
So they need home.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the order of the items. And again, I don't know if this has come from research or if this is just the way that you've seen it 1,000 times, so you just copy it. But typically, I go for, the home being the logo, and then everything that the logo occupies top left in most cases, and then everything goes horizontally to the right. So the usual items, and I'm not really that bothered about the list of items and what order they go in, so long as contact comes at the end. So the far right is contact.
Yes.
Although that could be replaced with a telephone number or something in a button or something else.
Yeah, I've got I always think about is an important page. I'm always convincing people they should do it because it's that, again, research suggested that it's the second most visited page after the home page, because it's where people find out whether they can trust the organization they're dealing with. So I think it's always a key thing to have, which a lot of people miss out. But so I go home, about, and then it will be the service or the product. And then if the blog is going in the header, which often these days it seems to make more sense because it's just for traffic, to stick it in the footer, because it might not be your main business, getting people to read your blog, but it might be a way of getting in traffic. But anyway, that's the next thing. And then it goes to contact, and then it will be the call to action button, which you mentioned was the telephone. So it would be the same thing. If it's a form that I want them to fill in, that may have a pop-up to a form to get people to take some action.
Yeah, contact us or something like that. Some clear invocation to do something, and that could be a telephone number or something. Do you use the word blog?
Yeah, I do.
I do as well, and I'm just curious, as people like my parents' generation, I don't think they would know what a blog was. I think they'd probably just avoid that because it's like some sort of mysterious technical word. Whereas if it said something like, I don't know, newsletter or posts or something, they might be a bit more inclined to understand what it is. But certainly, I think at my generation and down, younger, would totally get that. But it's just curious. But I think you're right to put it there because it links to all of the content. And if you are spending time making your blog something useful to your business from an SEO point of view, just don't relegate it to the footer. Have it there in the main menu.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends, really. I think, sometimes, if you're trying to, you don't want to distract people from your call to action, then encourage them to go to the blog as part of your main menu as one item you could get rid of. Because if your blog is only there to get picked up by Google and they will find that separately, then I want it out the main menu. So there's a decision, I think, to be made depending on what you're trying to get out of it. But but I don't like when people put news, because it's often, people who are wanting to use the blog as a way of just giving you information about themselves, rather than good content marketing.
You're right. Yeah. Well, one thing we've missed off there, I guess, if you've got a product, then pricing would be quite an important one, because
Oh, yes.
certainly if I go to let's say it's a web app or something, you know, and I'm assuming that this thing is going to have a monthly component of paying attached to it. That's more or less the first thing that I do, actually. I'll just check out the homepage, see what the service does, and then I'm instantly going to go to the pricing page and fully expect that to be in the main menu, probably the second item, you know, along with home, pricing, I don't know, features, something like that.
Yeah, that'll be me with most of the stuff that we would kind of buy. So it'll be home to take a look at what basically is there and what it does. And then it will be probably pricing to see if I can afford it, and then over to the about page.
Right. Yeah, because you like to check them out. So that's interesting, isn't it? Depending on what it is that you're doing, you're going to have a different permutation of those menus. But there is basically some kind of structure built up through history, and it usually involves home, about, pricing, service, blog, contact, call to action, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're right to use it. I mean, conventions just make it easier. If there's anything that's become a convention from other sites, you know, use it, because if the majority know that, it's just going to make navigation of your site easier. So I'm really big on trying to stick to anything that I think will help.
Yeah, and it would be totally possible to come up with a really wacky way of interacting with the menu. We'll come up to that in a minute, you know, drop downs and so on. But the point being that, why confuse people? You know, don't make me think, goes back to that. And if whatever is traditional and whatever is familiar, whilst it might not be artistic and it might not have the kind of like the, ooh, that's curious, at least it's obvious. And if you are hoping to, I don't know, sell things online or encourage people to read things that you're creating online, I guess it's better to just stick to something obvious, and the things that we've suggested so far are obvious. We've missed off the possible becoming more important over time item, which is the search, which often lurks at the end of the menu as well.
Yeah, that's a key one. I mean, I don't get to use it much because most of the sites I do are simple, and WordPress's search isn't very helpful. So you need to do some work to make that work. But yeah, it's a really important one. In fact, perhaps more important than the rest if you've got a lot of content.
Right, exactly. So if you've got a huge site, I don't know, it could just be content, or it could be e-commerce or something like that. I think search is probably the best item that you've got in the navigation, because, you know, they might land at your website and see that you sell 1,001 sofas, but they just want to get to the grey 3-seater one. Then you could go through all the menus and figure out where all the sofas are, and then click the color picker and decide which one you want. And I want the 3-seater variation and all that. That's possible. But if you could just type 3-seater grey sofa into the search bar, and you get right there, that, I just think search is such an important thing. Again, just like you, I don't really use it all that much. And my experience with WordPress search is that out the box, it doesn't deliver the most sensible things that I would have imagined it to. And just before we started recording this, we were coming up with all sorts of ways that we thought search could be improved in WordPress.
Yeah, God, I hope it's something. I mean, now React is part of WordPress. It would be so great if it can use that kind of technology to improve search down the line. I'd be so happy if they did that. I have played with those other plugins that you've got, Relevancy, and I think Better WordPress Search, I think, is the other big one out there. But Relevancy, I remember, this is going back, so things may be different, but it was something that would really bloat out your database. It would need to store a lot of information to deliver.
Yeah, and of course you've then got to kind of worry about the archives for search and things like that, but hopefully you're doing that anyway. But more important than ever. Usually I see that's just like some sort of microscope icon, or a text field which says search in it, and you then click into it and so on. But, you know, if you click the icon, whatever, then often things sort of like fade away into the background, and the search box comes in and you start typing, and whether that's Ajax or not doesn't really matter, but that's increasingly, I think, going to be important. Decent search in the main navigation.
So Jacob Neeson, he says drop downs are bad.
Oh.
Well, I've never quite understood his viewpoint on this. This is going way back. I mean, 2010 at least, he was doing some research on that stuff, and maybe actually much earlier than that. That they we organize our information in kind of lazy ways with drop downs. So there's always that difficulty, I think, with drop downs where people don't necessarily know whether the top item is the clickable one, or whether you just, when you hover over that, the drop downs are the only ones you should consider. And so I think that's a first point of confusion with drop downs. A mega menu, you see, which Jakob Nielsen thinks is good, doesn't have that. When you hover over a mega menu, that's never clickable, is it? I think that's the case.
I'm curious as to what you do here, because I know what I do, and that is to, especially with the advent of the phone, I kind of feel that there's a difficulty in engaging the drop down if that's a link. So,
yes,
if you're going to click on something and it reveals 3 or 4 items below it, you don't really want that to be clickable, because the finger, obviously on a computer, you can have the icon can change. It can go to a sort of finger icon, the hand icon, and that's more obvious. But on a mobile device, you've obviously got the concern that they would then click on an item, whereas in fact they just wanted to open it. You can obviously have the little down icon to the far right, but to me that's just another level of confusion. To me, that item is to open the other things, not as a clickable link. I'm going to get shot down for this, I'm sure.
Well, I'm the same. I mean, I prefer to make it, but that's not the case with other people I see on the web, and also my colleague as well. She would use the top menu as a link to a main page, and the rest would be sub-menu items of that main page. For me, it was just a way of bringing up the drop down so you could make your choice. Are you saying the same as me?
Yeah. Basically, it's not a link. It's just the link to open the items below it. That just seems to me to be the most sensible way to use it, because if it's trying to do 2 things, that's confusing. But equally, it's confusing if it's just trying to do, if it looks like it might be a link, that's confusing as well. I guess you've just got to come up with like UI kind of ways to make it obvious that this is not going to do anything apart from open the menu. But the opening of the menu, in my eyes, should be enough to indicate, oh, that's what that did.
Yeah. So I mean,
why does he
I'm
think?
with you on this one.
Sorry to interrupt. Why does he think they're bad?
Well, I think it's mainly because it wasn't a way of organizing content in a hierarchy that people could understand. So drop-down menus generally get used to just dump information under this one category, and there's no hierarchy to it. Where with mega menus, they're usually sectioned off into categories of information, which are more ordered. So I don't. To be honest, I've never fully understood his argument, and some of the research, some of the write-ups that they do, even though they're experts in that, I often feel they seem it's not so much research-led, but more opinion-led.
Oh, I see. I think I'd misunderstood. So drop-down menus bad, mega menus good.
Yeah, it's basically is the Jakob Nielsen perspective, or the NN group with Don Norman. That tends to be what they find. I love their challenges. I mean, I wouldn't take everything they say literally. I mean, it's going to depend on the design, but I do see the point where drop-down menus generally are just dumping in. It's just because they can't think about how we might navigate, how someone might take a journey. It's the easiest thing, isn't it? Just to stick a whole bunch of links under a general area. In fact, I've seen lots of people do this very badly, so they don't know where to stick something, so they may stick terms and conditions, say, under the homepage link or something, or about. It doesn't make any sense. It's just kind of sticking stuff in drop downs because you've got it, and it's easy to do in WordPress, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess the thing here is that mega menus work really well on desktop. In fact, I remember the first time I saw one, and I can't actually remember the website that I saw it on, but I remember seeing one of these mega menus, and it was just text. It wasn't filled with anything elaborate like you can do, videos and images and so on. Or there was virtually no color. It was just, I think it was like 3 or 4 horizontal menus. Sorry, vertical menus arranged horizontally. And I remember thinking, ooh, that's nice. And then I remember trying to copy one in just pure CSS. And I told you that when I actually finally did it, it was like, oh, yes, I've actually achieved something of value here. And I felt really proud of myself. But I guess with the advent of the mobile phone, trying to pack as much as you would get on a desktop into a mega menu makes that whole thing so difficult to manage. If you've got 40 links in front of you on a desktop, you can totally parse all of that and you can figure out where you want the mouse to go. But on a mobile, that could be like 4 or 5 viewports worth of scrolling. So different use case. And as mobile has now taken over as the dominant platform for searching the web, feels like mega menus have, well, on mobile especially, have kind of maybe had their day a bit.
Yeah. I'd like to avoid mega menus as much as possible. I mean, there's a real trend now for stylized mega menus where you do put other media in there, and I just think, I'm just not sure about that kind of stuff. I don't think it's a good idea in the menu area. But
you're taking up. I mean, you want people to click on links, not watch a video necessarily. I know what you mean, and some of it is just we can do this, so let's do it. But it feels to me like we have arrived at the notion that basically a menu is a tree of items, a tree of nested items. You know, you've got the top level stuff and then everything below that. And I think WordPress does a really good job. And I know that the WordPress menu system hasn't been updated for a long time. In fact, I arrived to WordPress when it was how it is now. I can't point to any change of any merit that's changed in the way that you organize the actual WordPress menus since I started using WordPress. You know, you got those little rectangular boxes, you search for something, you chuck it in the menu, it arrives at the bottom, you drag it into place, nest it, which can be quite awkward still. I don't know I've never tried that on mobile. How easy is that on mobile? No idea. And that's it. And you save it, give that menu a name, and then put that menu somewhere in your theme. And I still think it's pretty good. I've got no real gripes about it. The only thing that we were talking about that might be good is to be able, in the menu item, to be able to link menu items to search terms. So, for example, in the case of my grey sofa that I mentioned a minute ago, if you had a sofa page that was specifically for particular things, would it be okay to say, actually, do you know what? When searching for things that Google Analytics tell me people are searching for, can you just send them to this page, please? And I think having that in WordPress core would be quite nice.
Yeah. I think the only thing that made it a little bit more confusing in WordPress, and of course that's going to change again, is when they introduced the customizer. So you've got another route into changing your menus or creating your menus in WordPress to the traditional one through appearance menu, which is the one I always go to. So there was that. And then, of course, as we're moving away from the customizer with full site editing, we've got another change coming up. So, but otherwise, it's pretty good.
Yeah, having multiple places to do the same job is a bit awkward, isn't it? I like you, I never use the customizer to change the menus. I always just go to appearance menus and fiddle with it there, just because it's a richer space to do it in. You can really see what you're doing and the options are fuller, and you can just see what's going on a little bit more. But then, of course, you can also change the location of the pages within the editor. You know, you've got a choice of what the parent is and where it sits and so on. And that's a good way to set it up. But I feel just doing it all in the one place. So I would never set the menu where it belongs in the menu, and never teach to clients where to put something in the menu within the post itself. I always tell them to go to the menu, the appearance menu, after they've published it and set it up at that point, just because it's easier to see what's going on. And you can obviously rank it. I want that one first, second, third, whatever. It's just easier.
Yeah, absolutely. A few other usability things that I these are kind of my bugbears, really. So when I see in the main menus the links that will take me off the site, I hate that if I'm not given some kind of indication, some kind of icon that will give me some information that we're going to an external link. The interesting thing about the web, there is no HTML symbol for external link. It's a very odd thing.
We've got the one which is commonly in use, which looks like a little square with a little arrow going off to the top right. And I infer now what that means, but I use the web a lot. I think most people would just see that as, it's an icon. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but there isn't a standard glyph for that.
No, you're right.
That you can use. It's just I always think, why has nobody created that?
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so we'll just talk about some other things that we listed here. Hamburgers. Do people understand those?
You mean the actual hamburger in the thing that you eat, or the icon? Not a great deal of understanding of actual hamburgers. They're just meat in between bread. But yeah, I do. It was curious because we disagreed on this a bit as well. In that I fully assume that everybody knows what the hamburger menu means, and of course it means justify.
Even
it
going
means
back,
justify text left and right is what it means.
In fact, I'm not even sure I understand the hamburger, because most of the time it seems to be beef.
Right. Okay, we're really straying on. But no, I just assume that everybody now gets that. If you see that little icon on a web page buried in a menu, you understand that that's the menu. But I would imagine that it's true. The themes that I use present you with the option on mobile, probably even on desktop, to be honest, to have that icon, but also to have the word, well, whatever word you choose. Maybe you'll choose navigation or menu or something like that. But you could replace the icon with a word, but also you could mix and match. You could have the word with the icon. But I'm just pretty sure that as time goes on, that the hamburger icon is going to mean menu, and everybody will get it.
See, you're quite out there. You're quite radical for me. You see, there was something, but again, the research on this isn't up to date. So when I read something on this that people didn't get the hamburger, that started me using either a combination or just preferring a menu button that says menu, because there were certainly kind of research, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, which indicated that a lot of people still didn't get it.
That's absolutely fascinating, because it's just, I really did assume, but I am not the typical person, and nor are you. We just live on the web, and so we probably see it dozens of times each week. And it became, I don't know, I think probably it was driven by my mobile phone. Android uses it all over the place. I'm sure iOS has something similar. Certainly Chrome use it as the way to...
Yeah.
They used to have a little wrench icon, didn't they? That was their way of invoking the menu, and then they replaced it for hamburger. It seems like the best bet, in that, let's not come up with something new. Let's just push the hamburger menu as the one that we're going to use instead of coming up with something else. But yeah, if I see that top right on mobile, I know that's what it's for.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think everybody should know now. I mean, people are used to having a mobile, so I'm sure my research is out of date, but I'm still very cautious with these things. Something which I don't see built in, certainly it's not in Beaver Builder as a default for their menus, which I used to use all the time before. When I went to a mobile or tablet view, I would still just be leaving the links in. So if there's only under 7 links there, I would just have those links underneath each other to click on. So none of this extra stuff, none of this hamburger stuff. Or buttons
I see.
To reveal it. But just the plain links
I don't
just
see
stack underneath.
Oh, okay. So what you would collapse? So when it collapsed to mobile view, the menu would just be open. You'd see all of those links.
Yeah, exactly. So the logo would often go to center, and then the links would just be there. So maybe it would just be stacking as 3 and 3 if there's only 6 of those, and they would that's it. So. And that was the way I did things with Genesis before, because I think that was the default behavior with that. So
yeah,
you don't see that much these days. And I think, well, I understand that. At
yeah,
least you can still see your items. You know the names of them.
I think I'm seeing more and more these full screen mobile menus where you click, in this case, the hamburger, and everything fades in the background. Up comes something, and you've got your menu item. And either there's a little indication that maybe it's swooped in from the left or the right, and there's a little X and it will drag it away, or there's a little bit of the actual website revealed in a bar on the left or the right hand side, and you click that and makes the menu go away. That seems to me the way it's going. That probably would be my favoured way of doing things, just some sort of fly out menu, because you can pack a bunch in there and it's scrollable, but all the while that the website's living behind there somewhere, as opposed to something which is sticky at the top that you then deliberately have to, I don't know, you've just got limited size, or it consumes the entire page. I like the idea of being able to see that the website is kind of nested somewhere behind it, and you can make the menu go away.
But I still like the idea of those traditional links for me, because I mean, I don't use the mobile much, so in my experience, it's probably not to be trusted. But the idea that you're page loads, and then you see the logo, so you know where you are, and then you see the names of those links without having to click another button to see what's on this site. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do see what you mean.
When it's just links, it's just, it tells me what's there, So if I just want to know about products, I see it straight away, and I just go and click on that. I don't have to click on something then to find out where products is listed.
Yeah, I get it. I guess it just depends on the amount of links that you've got there. But curious, you showed me some nice examples of different ways of tackling menus on different device sizes. And the one thing that kind of stuck out was something that the BBC and other websites do, in that the narrower the menu becomes. So in other words, the narrower the viewport. So if you're on desktop, you get the full experience with all the menu links, and they're all there. And as you go down to tablet, some of them will obviously drop off, but the menu on the BBC website, they will rearrange the importance of the menu items. So what was fourth might become second. So, for example, I don't know, about or pricing might stay on the menu, but everything else will go to its own little drop down. So the far right menu item is replaced by a drop down. And then if you narrow it some more, items just get pushed into the drop down. I think that's a really, really ingenious way of doing all of it without having to consume the whole screen with some kind of fly-in menu. But you've got to make really careful decisions about which items stay on the screen and which go into the menu. And then there's a button which only looks like a drop down, and that just invokes that menu of all the hidden items.
Yeah. No, I think there's some great work. All the big, this article features a bunch of top sites and how they've got that. So British Heart Foundation, BBC, The Guardian newspaper, the World Wildlife Fund. They've all got very, very clever mobile first, I guess. They expand, you get more items, as you move out. So that's the way the article's gone. And it's really clever, isn't it, that they put certain items under the more, so the less needed.
And in some cases, like in the Guardian one, they really make that icon stand out. So when you go onto desktop, there's all the items are there. They're there for you to see, and you can click on any one of them. When you get down to mobile, I think you've only got one or two little items. The most important ones, it's probably like news and sport. And then they've got this really contrasting bright yellow circle with the hamburger menu in it, and you can't help but see it. It really stands out, and I think that's quite an ingenious bit of UI UX to make that work. And I'm presumably, if the Guardian have kept it for many years, it's working for them, because I haven't seen them change it recently.
No, gov.uk is probably the most interesting, because whatever you've just got a search bar.
Yeah, but that's interesting as well, because that site, can you imagine? So in the UK we have gov.uk, and it covers literally everything that you could interact with the government on. So I think a menu would be massively frustrating, because you're bound to get it wrong. Not only will you not use the right search term for the thing not only will you misunderstand where you're trying to get to, but you'll have to go through like 14 layers to get there. So I think they're probably relying on Google quite a lot, but also relying on their own search capabilities. If you need, I don't know, pensions advice, you just want to type in pensions and go. So fascinating. No menu at all, just search. Interesting.
Yeah, it's the only website that's ever won the major prestigious design award. So it's a real piece of work, and it's nothing to look at. It's just functional.
It's really functional as well, because during the recent COVID outbreak, we've had to use it to sort of submit tests, and it's brilliantly done. The buttons, the fonts are clear, easy to read. There's loads of spacing between the items. The buttons that you need to click are clearly marked, and they are massive and obvious. And the check boxes that you've got to tick, when you've ticked them, it's so obvious that you've ticked them, and you really can't go wrong. It is a masterpiece, actually. I remember filling out the first time we had to do that and getting to the end of it and thinking, I can't imagine a way of making that experience better. They did it really well. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Maybe they're leading the way. Maybe we're talking about menus and there isn't. Menus should be gone. It should be all search. Or what you mentioned to me about a voice activated
Well,
that might be the way of the future.
I think so. I think that, slowly but surely on my phone, obviously this is the mighty G, the mighty Google. There's so many things that you can do with that voice search now. And obviously we really don't have those capabilities baked into our websites yet, but that will come. But the idea that you've got a mass, again, using my grey sofa analogy, if you didn't have to go through menus and you just literally clicked the microphone icon and went grey sofas, and up came all the grey sofas, that's so good. I mean, obviously, massive amounts of usability problems there. You need ways for people to use the website that don't require voice, but it does strike me that in the future those kind of capabilities will become more and more used.
Let's just mention accessibility, shall we? Because
Okay.
I think that's key. I've played around, I don't know if you have, with those tools that you've got, which will take you, screen readers. I've downloaded some of those. And yeah, it's really frustrating going through menus,
Yes.
particularly if they don't allow you to skip the menu. So you land on, you've moved to your page where it tells you how you can get to that page again. Really annoying if your theme doesn't do that. I think most do allow you. It's just built in, allow you to skip the menu section. But yeah, if you've used a screen reader, you definitely want that.
And it just demonstrates immediately how incredibly frustrating it must be for people who are trying to use the web, who, let's say, for example, they struggle seeing things and they're relying on it to read things out. So many problems with those kind of things, just getting to the right item, knowing where you are, knowing what the current thing that you are on is intended to do. And I feel that this piece is getting talked about more and more as the web has matured. We realize that this is something that we need to deal with because a lot of the things have been ironed out already. This is a real area for growth in the future and importance, and people purchasing websites, I think, will come and they'll have this as an item on their laundry list more and more, even down to the mums and pops stores, because they're just going to start to know that this stuff matters and it's legal.
Yeah, exactly. There's more suing going on over these things, and it tends to be an afterthought, even with page builders, even with Beaver Builder. That some of the icons that you can put in menus and stuff, they haven't got ARIA hidden or the option to be able to change it or say what the icon is about if it's meaningful.
Right.
So if you're using icons in your menus, you don't want the screen reader to have to read out what that icon is. You want to disguise that because it's only visual, it's decorative. And if it's something that has meaning, such as a link to social media, then you need it to read out and tell you what that icon does.
Right.
And it's often an afterthought. I think it still is with a lot of the pre-built stuff for WordPress.
Yeah. But, I guess we can hope that in the future, as people are using the web more and more, this stuff will become more and more important. But I think you're right. An afterthought would be the right word for it, the state of play at the moment.
Yeah, I think we will get more of this. I read something today, actually, about the fact that there is an organization which are submitting what's the word for it? Complaints about cookie legislation. So mostly, GDPR came out and most people ignored it. And I think the same thing is happening with accessibility. People are getting much more active about websites these days. So we have to do more of that kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Tab index as well. That's another thing which always kind of that's another thing that can go wrong in WordPress, can't it? Often with your forms and stuff.
I've got to say, you're absolutely right. But from my point of view, I never invoke this myself. I always, and again, it's accessibility. I just, from my perspective, I click on things. But imagine the frustration if you were tabbing through and, you're fully expecting to go to the next menu item and you just end up somewhere utterly curious and, got nothing to do with it. And then you can't find your way back. It must be horrible.
Yeah, I've certainly come across it. In fact, I've never really taken any notice because I click and I put a couple of forms on a page and it all went horribly wrong. I had to sort it out with Gravity Forms, but it was just, it's interesting, different users out there, but the client I did the work for spotted it straight away, going, your tab index is wrong. That's what they do. They tab everywhere.
Yep. It was interesting. I think it's the new version of Gravity Forms 2.5, I believe it is. I don't know where we're at now, but anyway, this will be released. Yeah. But they've made that a big banner of their update, is that everything is allegedly, I can't speak to whether it's true or not, is much more accessible. So tabbing around the form would behave in the way that you would wish it to behave. And I think, they put a little promotional video together about that, and it would appear that they've done quite a lot of work as a way of differentiating themselves from the competition. Can't speak for what the competition are doing, but I know that Gravity Forms have done that.
Yeah, it's been a big thing for them, haven't they? Because they're seen as the industry leader, they really need to take that kind of stuff seriously, don't they? Which is what I like about them. Security and accessibility are probably their two key things, not the whizzy stuff so much. Okay, so our menu, we're supposed to have been moving on to the main course, but we've covered much of this, what we can do with our WordPress menus.
I think we have, actually. I think the main course items on our little laundry list of things to talk about, there's about 8 of them. I think we've covered all of them, haven't we?
Yeah, there are. mega menus we can do, and there's plugins that will allow you to do that. Some really complex ones. Sticky menus has become a thing. And here's something, again, with conventions. So some sticky menus will stick while you scroll down. Some will only stick when you scroll back up. Some will stick when you scroll up and down. We don't have a format. Which would you prefer?
I fully don't get menus that only stick when you scroll down. I just don't see that as normal common sense. Forgive me if this is something that you deploy all the time. To me, if it's going to stick, make it stick. Just have it at the top and have it slightly opaque. And, if you get to the top of the page, whatever was below it comes below it. But if you just want to have a sticky menu, make it, I don't know, one line high. I'm thinking on mobile here again, but the same applies to desktop. It's just your menu, but maybe it's narrower than it normally is. But it just stays in place. That's what I want.
But when should it disappear? So as you're scrolling down, should it? Oh, so it should be there in place when you're moving down or up.
That's what I want to see, because you've made the decision to have it there. But also, it shouldn't be big. It should be really narrow. You should make the point of making it narrower than the normal menu, so that when it's in place, it's just it's almost out of the way. It's not consuming much of the screen real estate.
Okay, what about split menus then? That's something which is quite new, I think, in design.
You're going to have to explain what a split menu is.
Oh, yes. So you've got the logo. Usually the logo is in the center of the page at the top. And the menu is split either side of it. So you're using one WordPress menu, and it uses some JavaScript to calculate how many items should go left or right of that. And they're very popular these days.
Yeah, I think they look really nice. I think they've got I don't know why, but it feels to me that something of heritage works well with that. Something like an old stately home or something. It feels like it belongs in the middle. You want the logo to be right in the middle. I've never built one of those. I've never deployed one of those, but I actually think they've got their place. The assumption, I'm guessing, though, is that once you collapse it down to mobile, that all changes and it becomes more of a conventional menu with logo left, menu items right, and so on.
Yes, exactly. Actually, it's interesting again. Jacob Nielsen, again, spoils it for us all, saying that they don't work very well. In fact, when they did some actual research, this is a couple of years back, they were looking at where the logo position was on the menus were on that. So apparently these centered splits don't work very well compared to the left-aligned logo and the right-aligned navigation. That is the ideal, according to them.
I think they look really nice. But whether or not they bring anything to the table in terms of conversions, I don't know. But I think they do look really nice.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same. Almost it's like you make your logo like a kind of royal crest almost in the center.
Right.
It kind of gives it some sort of style.
But it also feels like the logo needs symmetry.
Yes.
So that, what I'm imagining is bits of text with kind of like decorative scrolls underneath or something, and there's an equal amount on the left as there is on the right. All of that feels like it works. And if you've got a logo which is letterbox in dimensions, it feels like that would be great if it was symmetrical. But I don't use it. I don't know why. I just don't use it.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I think about it, I can't think it's on any client site that I've done. In fact, I did do it on my own Beaver Junction sort of demo sites because I liked it so much, but I don't think I've actually ended up using it. So yeah, interesting.
Does it appear as an option in any theme that you've ever used?
Yeah, well, it's in. I'm in Beaver Builder with me. It's in the Beaver Builder theme, and they've just added it for the next release of Beaver Builder.
Right.
The navigation menu there. It's going to be a split menu option, something I requested as well.
Oh, I see. Oh,
and
you're responsible for that. Yeah, I was going to say you've made them do all that, and you're never going to actually use it. Yeah, I think it's got its place, and I think it looks really nice when deployed correctly. But I won't be making use of it.
Yeah. No, you're probably best stick. I think it's always best to stick to the convention. So logo left, navigation right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Start from that point and then see what's required. Shall we move on to our last section, which is I've called the pudding, but actually I'm calling it pudding because I don't want to call it sweet because I'm always griping about the Gutenberg project. So
I wonder if anybody even knows what pudding is.
Probably not. Oh, come on.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you're from the UK, pudding's obvious, but if you're in a different part of the world, pudding is dessert, basically.
Yeah, I think we've had enough Downton Abbey going around the world.
Okay,
people must know what pudding is now. So navigation block. It's not out yet, is it, in WordPress? This is the future with the full site editing, but it's there in the Gutenberg plugin available. I've been playing around with the navigation block, so that's going to be how we're going to be delivering our menus should we go the full site editing approach.
I think it will become the way of doing it. I think it will at some point override all of the other things that I'm going to be doing. So we'll have the customizer, we'll have the menu area, and we'll also have the full site editing navigation block. I think probably once it's mature and it does all of the things that I need it to do, then the block will be where I want to go to do that, because it'll just take care of all the styling. So at the moment, you create your menus, your actual links in one place, and then you maybe go to the theme settings in the customizer to make it look a certain way. And the idea of handling all of this in one spot kind of makes sense to me. I like the idea, although obviously not fully baked yet. See what I did there? Baked pudding, very good.
Yeah, well, I think there's a big argument to be had, I think generally anyway, with Gutenberg over this stuff, because if you have the styling added to it, then we move into the page builder territory where you're styling kind of modules, and where does that CSS go? Where presently with the module, you've got the theme takes care of that, and you can add in your CSS selectors that you want if you want to put some individual styling on individual menu items. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But at the moment, the controversial part of it is the fact that the only way to get spacing with it is to use the spacer block, and that's not kind of good.
You can't see that being anything other than a kludge just to get through some point in time. I mean, it's got to have padding, right?
It's got to.
It's going to have padding. It's just nobody has it yet, and they just came up with some spacer way of doing it. So you add these individual little spacer blocks in. I'm sure it won't stay that way, but the ability to put in little, I don't know, CSS on the last item, for example, or the first item, so that it doesn't have left margin or right margin or whatever it might be. Those kind of things. Again, I'm sure it'll come. I'm sure it'll be fully mature at some point, but we're just watching it mature. And so that's curious, when I'm guessing that when WordPress came out with its menu, the way that they do menus now, all of that was probably done in the dark, and they iterated on it probably over a number of, maybe a year or so, until finally they got it right, and then just pushed it, and it was great. Those in the community that had no interest in watching it develop probably had no idea, and when it came out, there it was. But we got a different approach this time around. Everything's being done slowly and in public view, and it's being chopped into the Gutenberg plugin, and so we're seeing it happen. And obviously there's stages toward it, but I think it'll be a good thing to have everything in the full site editing area and especially menus, it just makes total sense to have all of that so that you can see what's happening as you do it, a little bit like in the customizer. But, change the view and the menu items and the structure of them all in one place. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, it sounds like it should be there. It should have been there forever. It's always been tricky, isn't it? This kind of headers and footers have always been difficult with WordPress, and this is a step in the right direction. I do think, though, and I think it shouldn't be underemphasized, this spacer block idea of being able to kind of put divs in between your list items for code. If it goes out with that, they're going to have to keep this forever because of backwards compatibility.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah.
And I think really this is one of the things that before it's shoved out there, they really need to pull that and just say, okay, so you can't have the padding that you want easily, but tough, because we can't have all of this nonsense code in there and have to support this for the rest of WordPress's life.
I mean, you could fully have the padding there. You just have to go into the CSS and
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, exactly the same as you could anyway. So I just don't think they should have that in. I think that's the real thing for me with this navigation block. It's like, yeah, I'm with it, but then when I saw that, I just thought it's got to go. Surely, it's such a bad idea.
Yeah,
and if you put it out and people start using it, you're stuck with it.
Yeah, I'm more than certain. I think that won't stick around. It's just a kludge in the meantime, but a kludge which is publicly visible. And now that WordPress is used by so many people, there's so many eyeballs on it. We can all see the problems. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so I think that's what we can say, isn't it, about the navigation block? We'll have to wait and see what's coming out.
Well, I'd say, I mean, we've been going on now for probably about 50 minutes or so. What more is there to say? Probably a whole boatload of things that we ought to say, because we always miss things out. So if you've got anything you want to add, we always post this stuff in our Facebook group, and obviously it'll go onto the website. Let us know.
Yeah. And next time, in 2 weeks' time, we're talking. I haven't asked you about this one. I thought we'd do N for numbers, and we'll talk about some of the surprising statistics that are out there on WordPress.
Fully hoping it'd be N for Nathan.
It could be.
Darn.
Maybe it will be.
No, let's go for numbers. That sounds good to me. Honestly, can you imagine how bad that episode would be? N is for Nathan. No. Okay, so yeah, we'll be there in a couple of weeks' time. If you, like I say, if you got any comments, let us know. Be curious to hear what it is you've got to say. But thanks, David. Nice chat.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. As always, a pleasure chatting to David Wormsley, in this case about menus. If there's anything you think we missed out, or if we just plain got it wrong, head over to wpbuilds.com. You can leave a comment there. Join our Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook, and you can leave a comment there. Or as I said at the top of the show, why not try out the new Mastodon, wpbuilds.social. Yes, that's a URL, wpbuilds.social. Join us over there and see what you make of it. You could perhaps tell us something about that comment. Go and search for it. It's episode number 234. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by AB Split Test. Do you want to set up your AB Split Test in record time? The new AB Split Test plugin for WordPress will have you up and running in a couple of minutes. Use your existing pages and you can test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is it works with Elementor, Beaver Builder, and the WordPress block editor. Check it out. Get a free demo at absplittest.com. Okay. We'll be back next week. Next Thursday, I'll have an interview for you. And on Monday, This Week in WordPress Live, 2 p.m. UK time. And also, we shall put it out on our newsletter the following day, and as a post and a YouTube video as well. And you can find all of that, wpbuilds.com/subscribe. Join the newsletter and keep updated. That's all I've got for you this week. I hope that you enjoyed it. Stay safe until next week. Bye-bye for now, and I'll fade in some cheesy music.